let's move on to Logic though. So I call people your guy a lot just to kind of poke you a little bit, add a tiny bit of humor. It's not very funny, but add a little bit of humor on here. But Logic really is your guy. I mean, you've been standing for him, I think, and I say standing loosely too on this, but I feel like you really have stand for Logic in the past. So you really have been there, been a big fan of him longer than a lot of other people have.
Well, that is true. Yes, and I've seen him live 3 times. Been I think I started listening to him
And
like
he's great
20.
live.
Yeah, he is very good. 2012 maybe. Like, yeah, I was listening a long time. Definitely before the fame, before he was popular for sure. But I've been very up and down in my fandom of him as his creative output has waxed and waned. So I was not super jazzed about this album. Again, he announced it only like a few days before it came out. And I kind of expected it was coming given all the singles he had been dropping. They had the similar single art aesthetic from Sam Spratt, like the cover. So you kind of figured it was coming. But yeah, I wasn't super hyped about it. And then when I heard it, I was like, yeah, okay. Wasn't I was right to not really care too much. But what did you think as a new evangelist to the Logic cause, the Church
I
of
mean,
Bobby Biracial?
we talked about Logic first, 2017 with everybody, I think was the first time we reviewed.
Yep.
I don't think we got to Bobby Tarantino one, and I think then we talked about Bobby Tarantino two, and I think we talked about Young Sinatra four
last year. Yep.
But so we talked about him quite a bit on here, and my stance on Logic, he's a very good technical rapper. I think he punched above his weight in a lot of ways, and he's also, I think, uses his platform for a lot of really meaningful topics, which I give him a lot of credit for. On Young Sinatra 4, the song that probably stood out to me most was the Wu-Tang song. And it stood out because it was an awesome Wu-Tang song. But it was a solid album, but I don't think there was anything on there that I took away being super memorable. And that kind of continues for me on Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, because while I think that this is well produced, well constructed, he's the same old rapidy rap self on here. I don't think that there's anything I'm gonna be talking about year end on here. I don't think there's any songs I'm even gonna be really remembering much. Maybe Keanu Reeves in a bit, but that's probably going to be because John Wick 3 is coming out, and I'm going to be thinking about Keanu Reeves a bit more. I don't know. There's some good and some bad on here, but it sounds like you're pretty disappointed with this.
Well, I think this actually kind of continues a conversation we've had several times now, the whole album Logic versus mixtape Logic, a meta convo that Logic has addressed on past projects at this point. But, with Bobby Tarantino 2, that was kind of like the modern day trap influenced contemporary sound Logic spin on that, right? The Young Sinatra 4, the other album from last fall, was more of the back to the basics, come up Logic, 90s inspired, sample heavy Logic. And his albums have largely been kind of down the middle in that regard, where he's much more conceptual, but doesn't usually go as hard as he did on those tapes. So Young Sinatra 4 was kind of refreshing for the old heads because they're like, yeah, we know you could still do this, but it was cool to actually have you try. Now, for Confessions, just sounds a lot like Bobby Tarantino 1 and 2 to me, and I was not a big fan of those just because ultimately I think Logic doing braggadocio, I'm so rich and successful now, fuck all y'all, is not that interesting when it's coming from Logic. Like, if I want that kind of rap, which is all fine and good, I'm just going to ask someone else to give it to me. Whereas Logic, I feel like, because he's a more thoughtful guy, as you said,
it doesn't seem sincere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when it coming from him, it almost feels a little lazy. Like, I know you could try and write better songs, but you're just kind of phoning it in on this because you're a technical guy. So it's not hard for you to make these songs. I mean, it speaks to his talent, obviously, but I would just prefer him to not just make these like victory lap albums because I feel like they don't do anything for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I think it's a great point. And I do wonder what it is about the mixtapes that seem to bring out so much more in him. Um, because I think that there is a stark contrast, um, just from the last two. Young Sinatra for me saying it wasn't memorable in a lot of ways. Felt like it just had more energy. Felt like he
Mhm.
just had more that he was trying to get across in terms of message. And here it almost feels a bit contrived at times. We were talking before we got on air about the song. I'm trying to make sure I get it right.
Clickbait.
Um, Clickbait. Yeah, right. Thank you. And how Logic is a very thoughtful person who, like I said before, brings messages into his songs that you don't hear a lot of artists talking about. Clickbait falls a bit flat because it doesn't feel like he's actually hitting the point home that he thinks he is, or maybe doing
No.
it in the best way. And it just kind of comes across as like,
I mean,
for
for
lack of a
me,
better way to say it.
clickbait specifically, which I think on its surface sounds fine. Like it's not like it's a
Mhm.
disgusting song or anything, but he thinks that he's making like a much deeper dig or punch back at his critics than he really is. Like it's not actually that witty. And ultimately, I feel like a lot of the things he talks about on Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is just pointing at his internet critics. And it's weird because I was actually looking up. This is projected to do like 75, 80,000 first week.
It's
It'll be
good.
his third number one. Obviously, a very successful week. But this is a far cry from Everybody, which did almost 250. And it's kind of
Hmm.
weird. And a lot of that's driven by 1-800 being a mega smash hit. But
Yep.
it is kind of weird seeing him kind of crest a little bit. But regardless, he has this huge fan base. Why do you care about the haters so much? I almost would rather you double down on the fans that got you here.
Yeah.
And I think just making music that sounds like everybody else but doesn't rise above it isn't really the best way to go about that. Obviously, your fans will be there regardless, and the money's not going to stop flowing or anything. But
Mhm.
it's funny. This we didn't even talk about Supermarket, which is the soundtrack album released at the end of March, uh, following up his book that he made.
Mhm.
And Supermarket was critically panned, like as panned as something can be, because he just does all this like stadium rock and guitar heavy and lots of singing, and it's just nothing Logic has ever done before. And Shocker, he's not actually
Oh
good at any of this. And
man,
I
I
didn't
wish
even
we had
ask you to
listened to that.
listen to it, let alone review it, just because there was no point in just shitting on something for 5 minutes. But
Did he sound
I
like Kevin Rudolph? Do
yeah,
you
God,
remember
maybe. I mean, he's all over the place on it, but
that?
I just he just has an era right now of my shit doesn't stink. I can do whatever I want. And while yes,
Mm,
technically you can do whatever you want, I think creatively it's just a little it just seems a little listless. Now that he found all the success and popularity and money, and he name drops a million people in the game on this, it's like he doesn't feel like he has a musical purpose right now. I don't know.
yeah.
So
You know,
again, it's not like the worst thing I heard. Obviously, he's very competent, very technical guy, and he's good ear for production. But it just nothing stands out about the album.
the point you brought up about him talking about his haters more than focusing on the fans that got him there feels almost like a conversation on like the nature of artists, because there is that like that piece for many artists where they feel doubted in some way, and that drives them to push themselves to reach another level, to put out better content. And once they reach that level, it's like, now what? What am I pulling from? What am I talking about? And this is, I think, a lot of times what happens with the rock artists we talk about who put out that great first
Mm.
album, and then after that, it's like, what do I have to say? What do I really want to get at? And it feels like for Logic, and we give him a lot of credit for being a smart artist, so to speak, someone that at least is talking about issues that no one else is talking about in his songs. I really wonder, maybe he's finding right now he doesn't know what his voice is because he's not sure what he really is trying to say. He's reached a level of success, and it happened fairly quickly for him. I mean, I know he's been
Mhm.
around for a long time, but he really blew up pretty quick and
Yeah.
reached this another stratosphere. And I wonder if he's still grappling with, now that I'm here, what do I really want to talk about? What do I really want to do with this? And I have no doubt he'll figure it out. I don't think we're going to keep getting this quality of albums from him, but I'd almost like to see him maybe try to make like an album with somebody else, something where he's like
Hmm,
pushing himself to collaborate and see if that can
interesting.
inspire something from him. Any songs on here that you want to touch on, or that you would recommend people check out?
I mean, yeah, I mean, still ball, and that's a follow up to Indica Badu, another Wiz feature. I thought that was okay. Commando, a G Easy, that's clearly a song for the white women. I'm sure that'll do well in those radio stations. My favorite song is Mama slash Show Love because it has YBN Corday. Very
Mm,
inspired feature choice. He's not really a secret anymore, but still, it's nice that a Def Jam rapper would put Corday on his
hmm.
album. I like that. He just announced a tour with JID and Corday. That sounds like a fantastic tour, the three of them. Uh, I did not like Homicide with Eminem. I thought Keanu Reeves, he goes really hard on it, but it just kind of went in one ear and out the other for me.
What
I
about
thought
"Don't Be
the Will
Afraid to Be
Smith
Different"?
feature was just a big gimmick personally. It's kind of
Yeah,
funny,
that's.
but whatever.
I felt the same way. I was like, Will Smith on this track just feels like you're
Then
trying to get
then
attention.
then again, on everybody, he had Neil deGrasse Tyson and Ansel Elgort. He's had shock features before, so whatever.
Yeah. Um, so Logic, not sure if we'll have one of his songs on there, but Ari Lennox we will. Again, check out the playlist, Nostalgia Pod Best of 2019.